So, hi, Shannon. Welcome to Confounded TV. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
That's a pleasure. I've followed your company for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, when did we first meet? It was a good few years ago now, wasn't it?
Many
Probably
years
about,
ago.
yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't even guess. The last 2 years have felt like a lifetime. So,
Well, we met just before COVID lockdown, didn't we? Glass of wine
yeah,
somewhere in London. It was great.
yeah, it was
Um,
lovely.
but the reason I followed your company, of course, and this is the interesting bit I think for anybody listening, is it has been a disruptor and a really interesting player in your space for such a long time. And really one of the first disruptive PR companies, if that's not going overboard.
No, I like to think so anyway, but I'm probably a little bit biased because I've been been involved for so long.
So I think it'd be interesting just to give us a sort of a history of like the sort of early days and when you started.
Yeah, sure. So, gosh, 10 Yetis goes back, launched in the summer of 2005. So I haven't been there quite since the beginning because I joined in December 2008. So at the time, Andy, who's our founder and CEO, he founded the company from a back bedroom with his wife at the time, Jill. And, you know, the company that put them on the map, really, and one of the clients that, we quite often talk about and comes up was a brand called Tribe Wanted. So an amazing entrepreneur called Ben Keane basically rented some space on an island in Fiji, and he built an online community that could then visit the island and spend time on the island. And it was just a really, really cool project. It eventually got turned into a documentary on the BBC called Paradise or Bust. So obviously all
Wow.
that exposure, all of a sudden, Andy and Jill were getting phone calls from brands like Pirelli and, huge brands, asking for PR because, it'd done so well. They lost all of those pictures because they just weren't ready for it at the time.
Yeah.
But, that was one of the ones that we were really well known for. And when I joined, the company were in an official office. It had evolved from the back bedroom agency, and some of the earliest clients that we worked with were people like My Voucher Codes, Mark Pearson, who's
Wow.
obviously gone on to do amazing things. So when I joined in 2008, that was one of the biggest clients of the agency. We were doing so much activity for them, press releases most days to different sectors. And I think PR was one of the only marketing tactics they were using at the time. So that was a really interesting one to be involved in, and one of definitely our kind of legacy clients. But yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting growth story in terms of how the agency has changed, because when I started it was very much PR was what we were known for,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we mostly did for clients. But then over the years we were having clients coming to us asking for cross-platform campaigns, so stuff where we could incorporate social media, perhaps some like hero content like video assets and design. So we basically evolved to kind of try and bring all of that in, and yeah, the rest is sort of history now. So yeah, loads of amazing clients we've had along the way, and yeah, it was kind of those really early days of kind of like online travel agencies and discount code websites,
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing.
Back in the day when you could just knock up a PHP site and put some affiliate links on, except Mark did it
Exactly.
slightly better.
Yeah, definitely. And we've worked with loads of affiliate sites over the years, and randomly a lot of affiliate networks as well. We seem to have had a lot of those under our belt and done campaigns for them. So yeah, we know a lot about the affiliate world.
I think because I was in the space then, sort of building my own stuff, and I think your name kept coming up again and again and again. Because, I mean, I know I was in it, so I was like sort of reading this sort of, I would read the right content, but it was quite amazing that you get these disruptive brands coming in, and it's so obvious that that good PR was driving that awareness and effectively creating that sort of what I'd call sort of the size of them was bigger than they probably were. To be fair, you were doing a good job of saying, here is a company, and they all of a sudden would get great coverage, and including, really big news sites and things.
Yeah, and to be honest, it was a lot easier back then. Like when I think about when I started and I was like day to day, because my background, I'm MD at the agency now, but my background is PR. So when I started, I was a PR account exec and just sort of worked my way up from there. But when I was day to day on PR, comparing it to what the team have to do now, it was much easier to get coverage. I don't know why exactly, but it was just there were more media outlets. You know, the teams were bigger. I think a lot of the teams within like news desks and things like that are getting smaller. So, you know, they were just more open to stories and to pitches, and it seemed to be a bit more of a breeze, to be honest.
But also, it was new, right? You're building like voucher codes and saying, you know, now all of a sudden you can get a discount all these places if you just join this website. You know, that was new. If I launched, you know, Al's discounts now, I don't think you could even move the needle no matter how much money I gave you, because who's interested, right?
Yeah. And one of the other first clients we worked with as well. It was a client when I joined, but not for too long. Is sunshine.co.uk, which was an online travel agency kind of targeted at families, and that was at a time where people were still typically going onto the high street into a travel agency to book their holidays. So you know, trying to do PR that would convince people, oh, it's fine, just book it online, it's completely trustworthy. That was a whole experience in itself. So yeah, it was super interesting for us to work with these kind of brands that were, you know, really disrupting the industries that they were in, and really, you know, going along with that move to digital and that move to online. So yeah, just really, I love looking back on those stories and kind of seeing where they are now. Obviously, Sunshine we worked with for probably close to about 8 years or so, maybe even a bit longer, and then they eventually sold to On the Beach Group. So you know, it's I just, my favorite thing to do is work with startup brands and be able to kind of be part of that journey with them. So one of the ones that always comes up, and still brings a lot of new business our way, because so it's Huel, Julian Hearn. So he mentioned us, I think it was in a podcast actually, and from that we still get people say, I saw you work with Huel on the UK launch. And where Huel is now, you know, we were just launching them to the press, getting journalists to give up food for a week and try this, you know, powdered food replacement, and then seeing their journey. And you know, I still kind of follow what those guys are doing, and Julian's posts on LinkedIn, and I just love it, because you can, in a way, we can be part of their history, and you know, not saying obviously we're totally responsible for their global success, but you know, it's just lovely, really. And yeah, I suppose the reason I've been at 10 Yetis for so long, because it's been, gosh, it was like 13 years in December, is because everyone's like, oh, you know, have you not ever wanted to get out and get a change? But every single new client that we get in is like a new job, because it's a new brief, it's a new, you know, a new project to work on. So there's never a dull day, and no 2 days are ever the same.
And I guess also, like, when you're doing startups are fun, right? I mean, they're actually more fun if you're not actually starting them and you're just involved on the sides. They can be great and they can be really hard. But I think the thing is, what I saw with you guys back in the day was you would take a client on and effectively normalize something that they were trying to say is the new paradigm of whatever it was, like, you know, powdered lunch. You know, because if you take a cynical view, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to put this in a shaker and shake it and have that instead of lunch. It's a hard thing to do. But you did put people on the map. I mean, that was obvious back in those days. And even now, you're still doing that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, when you think about brands like Carwow, so the first time I met James Hind, who's the founder of Carwow, I went up to Liverpool, met him at his parents' house where he had a little office. It was before Carwow, it was called Carbuzz, and it was just a review aggregator. So, you know, we worked with him on the launch of that, and then all the investment rounds that he went through, right through to, you know, the changeover to Carwow, where people could actually buy the cars, and that was coming in and completely disrupting a really kind of like archaic model, really, which is car dealerships and stuff. So trying to kind of convince people to move online for something like that, you know, it was great, and it was perfect for PR, because journalists love a disruptor narrative, don't they? So totally being able to kind of look back on, you know, where James was at when I first met him with, you know, Carbuzz and everything, and then having been lucky enough to have worked with them over the years, through the kind of growth through to the huge office in London with like 200 staff. It's just great because just following those journeys and being able to try and help those brands, you just get a real buzz out of it, really.
I think and that's one of the things about your company that I think is quite special. Free plug. But I do think the interesting thing is, when you do a startup and you raise some money, you have a few quid, not very much, and you need somebody to sort of go, yeah, we'll help you here. And I would imagine the fact that you keep these companies through the seed round, through the A series, and they keep you as an agency says more about you, really, I think, because the temptation when they start bringing in experienced C-suite people for them to go, oh yes, but I know Bob at ABC agency, right? They're big and special, and they're used by all these big names. I can see the attraction, but you keep the clients for a long, long time.
Yeah, over the years we've had really good client retention, and don't get me wrong, we have had times where, exactly like you just said, they've had senior people coming in who have a preferred agency. They've maybe moved things over to them. Maybe it's not worked out, and then they've even come back. So that's quite nice. We've had, we're not precious. we'll take clients back, and I think one thing is with PR, it's because it's one of those marketing services where there are no guarantees what you're going to be able to get for people, because it's all earned. It's not, just like paying for an advertorial piece. So, sometimes the clients want to test the waters with different agencies, and that happens for sure. But it's been really nice to see clients reusing us a lot over the years, and we still have brands that come back to us that we've worked with from years and years ago. So I like to think that means we're doing something right, for sure.
So can you explain to me, so obviously the industry has changed, or as you were saying, there's fewer journalists, probably fewer media desks, whatever, but also you hear digital PR as if it's a different thing from PR. And sometimes I see this, and what it seems to mean is we'll get you an article on some website you've never heard of for some backlink you probably don't really need or want. And it seems to be I have seen people out there who basically tout what seems to be very simplistic digital PR. So how do you see PR now, sort of without in that digital space?
Yeah, so it's definitely changed. Like I was saying earlier, before, comparing to when I started, a client would be over the moon with a full page in the Metro, for example, and that would be like,
could I have one?
Yeah, but now most clients that we have don't even want print coverage. They don't care about it, and we kind of have to explain them, well, it's still worthwhile, because then it can also lead to online coverage, because it's the same journalists that work across both. But ultimately now, I'd say about 80 to 90% of the brands that we work with just want PR for SEO. So they just want links. So digital PR is no different to normal PR. Obviously people call it digital PR because it's just sexy. All online. So it's just basically changing stories slightly so that we have some kind of good hero content that journalists will want to link back to. Like now nobody wants those big spreads in print papers, even if it's like nationals, they just want links from as many decent sites as possible. So a lot of what we do now is really link focused and trying to build those links for brands, because that's the priority. I have to jump you here. I don't understand this. So I launched Alistair's new sexyholidaywebsite.com, and I want visitors to the site. I get the SEO value over the longer term, the more backlinks, the more authoritative. I get all that stuff. Yeah. But really what I want is the front page of the Metro to go, look at this amazing new way to book your holiday. So every second the tube goes, oh, well, look at that amazing. So people don't actually think there's a value in that. It's so surprising, really, really surprising.
Is there no value in it? I mean,
of course there is. I'm still very much, and some people might call that a bit old school, but there's still so much value, I think, in especially publications like the Metro, because like you said, the circulation of that, because of the tube network and the buses and everything, is huge. So I still think there's huge value in getting those print pieces. I think they are just as important as your SEO and your link building, because print isn't dead just yet. So
No.
whilst it's still there as a platform, I think brands should definitely not just disregard it completely, because it can deliver so much. We've had, I know this is maybe going back a while, but thinking about the Metro specifically, we were working with a brand at the time called wish.co.uk. They did experience days, zombie boot camps and experience days. So we did really cool campaigns around that, and like auditioning for new zombies at Pineapple Dance Studios and stuff. And we sent a journalist from the Metro onto one of the experiences, and it was page 3 of the Metro, a really like full page, really good piece. And it drove so many sales that it actually sold out the actual experience itself for like months and months. I think it drove something in the region of like £200,000 worth of sales. So you can't say that it doesn't work, because that was just print. That wasn't, online with a link. So yeah, I mean,
and there's an interesting dichotomy, isn't there? Because like somebody's willing to pay TFL, however much, to have the other side of the opposite you when you're standing at the station, a massive big print poster saying, get your shopping in 3 seconds, because we're just like Wheezy, but we're not Wheezy, but we're just like that. We're another Wheezy. But they don't see the value in actually somebody opening the paper and going, you can get your shopping in 5 seconds, and whatever the difference is.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully there are still clients that do kind of, appreciate the value of it and think, yeah, do you know what? Everything helps. It's not just online, but I think marketing teams are under so much pressure from an SEO perspective to make sure they're delivering on that aspect of the brief, that they're kind of like, well, that's the priority. So we're not too fussed about print, but just put all your efforts into trying to get backlinks. So, it's really kind of a mix in terms of what people's thoughts on it are. But my perspective is that print is still important, as much as digital campaigns are exciting. And when you get those really good links from, like Mail Online or Telegraph, it's like, yes, clients are going to be happy. I still get that buzz from if I can hold the coverage in my hands, and
I would. Yeah,
it's
probably it's a generational thing as much as anything, isn't it? Because if you grew up hacking websites together, you'd be over the moon if you were featured in a newspaper. Because one of the things that gives you validation, right? So I've started the start, I raised a few quid, built this thing, and now look, it's covered in the Mail on Sunday or whatever. You'd be happy. And also, I suppose now I would have thought if it's an article, it's also a digital article, right? They wouldn't. The two things they're not separate anymore, are they?
Not really. So you get the odd occasions where stuff is just in print and won't go online as well, but that's quite rare. It's quite rare. Usually if it's going to be in print in a magazine or a newspaper, it has an online version as well. So, it kind of ticks both boxes.
Okay. And for a younger company starting up, so, somebody who's coming into this as, and as a young founder, and she's building a new business and is a bit wary of PR because you don't have much money to spend. When is the time to consider, using a company like 10 Yetis?
I think the time to start really seriously considering it is when that everything is all good with your website. You can handle, the logistics of it all if you suddenly were to get like an influx in orders and things like that, because quite often if a brand isn't ready and, a load of coverage is secured and all of a sudden huge amounts of traffic are going their way, the site falls over, they haven't got the supply to meet the demand. So I think when you're very confident that everything's all set up and you've got all of those processes really tied up and sorted, and that you're ready for that custom, I think that's the time when you should be thinking, yes, I'm going to go for this. We have had clients that we've done like pre-launch stuff for as well, which works particularly if it's going through like investment rounds and things. You can do a bit of PR around what's to come, almost like a bit of teaser PR. So you're trying to build that audience before you're ready. So, but as long as you manage the messaging right, and you've got that kind of plan in your head of the timeline of things of when they're going to be ready and when you're going to be ready for those customers, then you can do a bit of activity before, and that can work quite well as well.
So it's a bit of the Reddit front page effect. You end up on the front page of Reddit and everyone's websites fall down.
Exactly. I think thankfully over the years we've not had too many instances of it's a nice problem to have, isn't it, too many customers, but if the site does fall over, then you're losing a lot of money. And once when we were working with my voucher codes, if you could get something in the Money Saving Expert newsletter, which has millions of subscribers, and you could get a link in there for a deal, you know that was going to kind of deliver a lot. And my voucher codes managed to get an exclusive deal. I think it was with Thornton's at the time, where they were giving away a free chocolate egg. I think there was no catch. It was a tiny little like Cadbury's cream egg size egg. There was no catch. You just had to fill out a form and you could go in and get one. And Money Saving Expert put it in the newsletter, and it drove so much traffic over that it toppled Thornton's over, and it was just
wow.
It was crazy. But so yeah, I think you need to be ready for the unexpected. Like, even if you think, I'm not obviously saying that every piece of PR coverage is all of a sudden going to drive, millions of people your way, but you need to make sure that everything is in place, that you're ready for the attention, I guess, because you don't know how many people are going to come knocking and wanting your services or your product as a result of that.
So you get a worst case scenario is you get a backlink, right? Mm-hmm. Your best case scenario is it just goes nuts because you hit a moment, you hit a theme, a meme or whatever, and then it's all hell breaks loose. And I guess if you're starting up and you haven't quite got the DevOps and the scaling servers and all the rest of it set up in AWS, you're in for a shock.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely different levels to the success of a piece of coverage. And even what I was going back to saying earlier with people preferring online coverage with a link to print coverage, there's even different levels of it on the digital side of it. So when you get a piece of online coverage, if it's a great article, it could be, super promotional, maybe it's like a product review or something. But if the journalist doesn't then include a link, some clients are like, oh, well, it's not the best, is it? And you're like, but it's good. So we have to spend a lot of time trying to chase journalists to add links in if they haven't included one initially, which, is a whole nother side to it, all that link rec. So yeah, it comes with its challenges, but yeah, thankfully, most journalists give out links quite openly.
I was going to say, because there comes a point here where I'm a journalist and I don't include the link and you just phone me up, right? And then this happens every time I don't include a link. So eventually I'm going to go, I can't be bothered with this. I'll just include a link, right? It saves me all the grief.
Yeah. And I have heard of cases as well where journalists have got quite funny about it and said, well, is the piece of coverage not enough? And you've got to be careful, because if you get on the wrong side, they could just take the piece down because they're so, annoyed that you're asking. So you do have to know, how you have to tread carefully and have that kind of relationship with them where you can say, is there any chance you can add one in? Like, sorry, it's just part of my job. But yeah, it must be tough for journalists, because I imagine they're getting hounded by PR people. It used to be, can you run my story? Like, have you seen it? And now it's just, I need a link.
Was there in the early days of 10 Yetis, was there like a relational basis of your, start again. In the early days of 10 Yeti, was talking to journalists much more relational, as in you actually knew them, you'd have met them? And is it more now just a case of everything's online, you don't do the whole schmoozing thing anymore?
Yeah, 100%. So going to take a client on a media tour around London, to sit down with a journalist for a coffee or lunch, that was much easier to organize because they had time to do that, and it was useful for them as well as the PRs. Now it's very rare that you can get some time with a journalist and convince them to take like an hour out of their day to have a sit down with you and a client. It does still happen, but definitely not on the same scale. It's so different now. And also the same for press events. So we still have some clients getting in touch and they're like, I'm launching a product, I want to do a PR launch event and invite loads of journalists along. And the first thing we say is, it's not like it used to be, because you might get 40 journalists saying that we're coming, and then on the night you might get 2 turn up. So it's tough because they're so busy, and it depends what it is. I think if it was like a big brand and for example, we worked with Superdry when they launched their Idris Elba range for the social media side of it. And, something like that, obviously you're not really going to struggle. But when it's like a startup, new product, trying to get those journalists is definitely tougher now, 100%. And I think we still have good relationships with journalists. We still have those people that we can check in with, and just casually run stories past them, and maybe if we're down in London we'll grab a coffee with them, but they move around so much as well, so it's like they might move to a publication that is in a different niche to any clients that you have. So it still does, there's still a place for it, but it has changed a lot.
But you have the relationships, right? Because you work with these people for 15 years, whatever, some of them, I guess.
Yeah. We have the relationships with a lot of journalists to be able to kind of lean on them a little bit, and even to the point where if you're suggesting a story for a client, having a bit of a chat with them about whether it's something that they would actually be interested in before you go and invest all the time and the research into it to put it together. We still have relationships, but I would say relationships with journalists are far less important now. So it's handy if we have clients get in touch and we can say, look, we've worked in this sector, we know all of these journalists, we know that we can go to them with your stories. But it's just as easy with journalists that you don't really have a relationship with, because there are new ones joining all the time. Like I said, they're changing teams, changing publications. So it's that's the relationship side of it is less important.
And as I find, everybody's getting younger.
Yeah. I know.
I was talking to somebody yesterday who's been in the internet for as long as me, and it's quite frightening. He said, I used to knock up those sites. Do you remember X site and Y site? And I was like, I do. Because, of course, in 99, 2000, there were so few sites that if you actually remember individual websites. Of course, now most of the brands that are new that you come across, you tend to get an Instagram ad thrown at you. You don't tend to visit a website. And it's an interesting conversation. Like, which websites do you go to? Like, who goes to websites? Because Instagram's an app, right? Who goes to the website? Yeah. So which, there's news, Google, or, something, non-Google for those people who want to de-Google. And then that's it. Like, if you ask me what sites do you go to, there's none of this discovery anymore. Like almost like the Wordle thing, right? He built this thing and it's kind of gone a bit nuts. That's how the old days used to be. People just knock something up and it goes a bit nuts.
Yeah.
There wasn't all this professionalism around. It's a startup. Here's my plan. This is my pre-seed funding. Here's my SEIS. I'm going to bring in 50 grand to build. It's all very serious. And back then it was like, I'm going to build this quiz thing. Right? Yeah. Do you see this morning he sold for $10 million?
I did. It's crazy.
Tuesday, the 1st of February, just in case, this is out next week. It's just, but it reminds me of the old days, right?
Yeah.
Does it not?
How something can just take off like that overnight. It's just insane, isn't it? Like, I only heard about Wordle like last week, I think it was.
90 users in November, 300 users in December, a minimum of $10 million in his pocket on the 1st of February.
He's done all right, isn't he?
He's done all right. And I was listening to the head of games at the New York Times, and he was saying, oh, yes, it's a very special game, justification. And I think this reminds me of that drawing game that everybody played when they for a while and then didn't ever play again.
I know the one you mean, because I have that on my phone as well. It's basically like Lingo, the program on which with the afternoon telly on sometimes. I'm familiar with, but it's just crazy, isn't it? I think it just goes to show the potential for quite a simple idea and how it can just take off because of things like social media. When I heard about it, it was only because people kept sharing their results on on Facebook, and I was like, what is this? Like, it looks like that Lingo TV program. And then I started having a go on it last week, and it's quite addictive, but then you have to wait for the next one to come out the next day. I'm like, insane. It's impressive.
I do wonder if he's actually, I heard him being interviewed before he sold it and everything. He's like, oh yeah, it'll never have ads and I'll hopefully keep it free and all this great stuff. But I do wonder actually if he's very smart and he studied game theory, right? So it's a little bit of dopamine once a day. And it's a little bit of competition with your friends, because can you actually fix it before they do? And it has all the little hooks and a little adrenaline burst that you need to want more of it the next day. It's basically like a crack junkie thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you think they'll keep it ad free and not try and monetize it in any way? To
be fair, I quite like the New York Times. It's $1.99. It's really good journalism. I think it's better than some of the stuff in the UK.
That's not difficult.
It's just a bit more. It feels a bit more grown up. I think, And I bet you a link in the New York Times gets you a fair amount of traffic.
We have had some in our time, because
do tell.
Yeah, no, we've had, I think that zombie stuff I was speaking about earlier, I'm pretty sure that kind of, for some reason, we didn't even push it in America, but just from the UK stuff, we got all of a sudden all these American titles were picking it up. So yeah, places like New York Post, New York Times, Washington Post, those kind of titles. I know, yeah. It's a whole nother realm of link building in America. I think typically we've just done a campaign for a site called InsureRanks, and they want some US pickup and links and some I do notice a difference through the ease of getting links with American press compared to UK for some reason. I don't know if it's just that there are way more publications there or not, but it's difficult to tell. But usually they'll just put a link in and you won't even have to ask or go and chase up for one. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the American press. I try and push more stories over there because even if the client doesn't operate in the US or sell over there, if the story is of interest to them, then it doesn't really matter because those links are still really good.
Well, I've seen plenty of UK startups. That everyone's got that little thing about 2/3 way down the website as seen on.
Yes.
Yeah, and people who have got no relevance to the US, as seen on the New York Times or the Sydney Morning Herald or whatever. But obviously,
why?
it's all validation, though, right?
Yeah, and because of things like social media and stuff, that the stories just spread a lot further than they used to, and I think a lot of news outlets now turn to other newsletters for like inspiration for stories. So even if you just, if we get something on the Mail Online, for example, a lot of places look to the Mail Online for stories, and then someone might pick it up from there that we haven't pitched you directly, but you can tell that they've kind of pulled the story from there. So yeah, it's like the media outlets are kind of working for us, which is nice.
It is, and it's like a really, really lucky break as well, isn't it? It's interesting, and I suppose you need to catch a slow news day, and not the day that Sue Gray's report comes out.
Yeah,
or the next time Sue Gray's report comes out, or when the Met Police report comes out, or the ongoing saga of everything that's going on in the world. Because does it make a difference the level of noise in the news, like to the rest of if you take away the front pages? Does it make a difference if it's Ukraine? Partygate, Met Police investigation to Boris. Does that impact your ability to get stories?
It can do, definitely. I think it depends on the story you've got going out. And so, for example, if you had, I don't know, a fashion related story that you were going after, like lifestyle reporters and fashion reporters, then you're probably safe if there's like a big political shitstorm going on. But otherwise, it can get quite congested in terms of trying to get cut through and trying to get journalists to get back to you, because if it's just typical news journalists that you're going to, or sometimes journalists get pulled from one news beat onto a different one, so certain things, like if there's a budget announcement or if there's a general election happening, we'll think probably best not to send a story out on that day because it's going to get a bit drowned out. It will probably just disappear into their inbox among a load of other reactive stuff about that particular story. So you do need to be careful with that and the timing of things. Yeah.
And how does it fit together with, so I've got my budget for my business and I'm going, okay, I haven't done this before, so I'm going to do some PR. But they've already done some like online marketing stuff. Do the two things marry up? Like, do you sit down and do sort of a campaign around, this is what we're going to do, so your marketing needs to work with us? Or do you look at what their marketing strategy for the next 3 months is and say, we could do some things around that? How do you blend in with like an internal marketing team?
That's definitely our preference, is to be able to kind of get our hands on their marketing plan and what other activity they've got scheduled in, and what kind of newsletters they're sending out and what kind of social media content they're putting up. If they've got any like themes or certain things happening, then we will always try to make sure that the PR campaign and the proactive stories that we're sending out are really complementing that. It's not always the case. Sometimes with certain brands it's quite disjointed, and social will do one thing and then they'll have other stuff going on in marketing, and we'll just do, especially with link building, because if they just want links, it can be just a standalone project, doesn't have to necessarily have anything to do with what else is going on, but our preference is definitely to try and make sure it's all quite cross-platform, everyone's singing from the same song sheet, and I think really you're going to get a lot more effective results that way, because when consumers or whoever your target audience is starts to see the same kind of things through all of your different channels, that's when the message really starts to sink in and kind of resonate with them. So I would say that's always the best way to work, and quite often we will. It's not uncommon for clients to have different agencies, so they might have someone looking after their PR, someone looking after their social. So we'll either try to kind of set up calls with them, have a chat about what they're doing, and work alongside them, really, because I think it can sometimes feel like it's quite competitive if people are like, well, we delivered these results and PR delivered those results, but that's really counterproductive. So it's best if everyone is just like, we've all got the same goals. I don't care who takes the credit for it, but let's just kind of go for it together and see what comes out at the end of it.
Avoid the power struggle.
Yeah, definitely.
So where do you see sort of 10 Yetis and PR moving? Like, what's coming? I mean, do you do any kind of sort of future stargazing, go, okay, this is how we think PR is going to look? You've seen the changes in the last 14 years you've been doing it. What do you think is going to happen over the next few years?
I think, yeah, we do that.
Tough question. You're allowed to pause for thought here.
Yeah, we definitely kind of sit down and think about those things regularly, because quite often we'll have to adapt our activity to make sure that we're, certain like trends, if journalists are not liking certain ways of PR anymore, if we have to switch that up. Personally, I think things are just going to continue to get a hell of a lot more digital, and digital is going to be a bigger and bigger focus. I think if we're looking a bit more longer term, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that some print publications will go completely, because a lot of the newspapers are struggling, and that's no secret. That's why things like paywalls have been cropping up all the time, and prices are going up and things like that. So I think digital is going to be even bigger focus as we go through the next coming years, and probably the way that PR agencies have to work with journalists, especially with things like trying to get links. We're already seeing that some publications won't give out links. Obviously, there's different kinds of links, which is a whole nother story. Yeah. But if you can get a follow link, that's like a good link for SEO. Some journalists either won't link at all. They won't give follow links. They'll just give what's called a no follow link, which doesn't have the same amount of value as that in Google's eyes. So I think a lot of publications will start clamping down a bit on their link practices and what links they can give out, which will make things tougher for PR.
Because it impacts them, right? If they just link out all the time on every article, I think it does actually affect their SEO.
Yeah. So I think, they have to be making sure that the links that they are giving out are, worthwhile, valuable for the readers and things like that, and that they're not like impacting their content in a negative way. So there are reasons for it, and I think PR teams are going to have to get even more creative in what kind of stories they're going to put out for clients, and how are they going to achieve these crazy link KPIs if journalists just won't give them out. So I think there's going to be a bit of turbulence around that sort of thing. I think PR in itself needs a bit of a rebrand, right? Because it's like PR, social, everything now is like I was saying earlier, that cross-platform approach is best. And so your social media activity, that's PR. You're trying to communicate with the public. Yeah, it might not be through media outlets necessarily, but it's all kind of much of the same. So I think there will be a move to things being a lot more integrated and not kind of dealt with by all these separate teams that might be doing slightly different things. There's definitely going to be some changes for sure, and PR agencies and brands will have to adapt to kind of keep up.
And I'm sure you will, because you guys are veterans, right? So
yeah.
Unless you've forgotten to be nimble, then I think you'll be just fine.
Yeah, I'd say we're definitely used to it, because over the years things have changed so much already, and we've had to make a lot of changes and switch up how we do things. And yeah, that's just part of business, isn't it? Every business has the same problem with just keeping up with trends and making sure that they're one step ahead of what's going on in the industry. So it's no different, really.
Yeah, I think it's. I always thought PR was a bit of a dark art until I actually met you guys for real for the first time a few years ago, and I think it always felt one of these things. I would kind of bluster and go, but when I saw you in action on the client of mine's offices, I thought, this is really smart, actually. You know, I knew it was good, but I didn't realize how good. And I think it's a really, really good tool in a startup's, you know, war chest of things they can do, because they can spend a lot, in my view, they can spend a lot less on good PR than they're willing to spend on incredibly expensive AdWords.
Yeah, it's insane. You know,
has gone insane.
Some of the ad budgets that we hear of, just, you know, through our clients, it's like, wow, you know, that you can't actually believe how much money they're pumping into it. But a lot of the times it's working amazingly, and that's why the more
it's all inflation, right? Because if an ad if a click used to be 20p, then everyone raises VC money and makes it 50p, then 80p, then £1, and then £5. And if you're in some sectors, £25. Right, it's getting to the point where that price is passed on to the consumers. No matter how fancy and brilliant your product is, you are making it more and more expensive. And we seem to have lost our way with the guerrilla tactics a little bit for startups. It seems to be the only default is go back into London, raise more money, spend more money, and then those who spend the most will win. That's somebody's got to. There are people who are not doing that, who are doing quite well, because the days of the voucher cloud and just hacking your way through the beginning seems to have gone. I think because people have there's a generation I've grown up and said, this is how you build a startup. You raise $500,000, that's your seed money. Crack on, spend it all, and as long as you hit the right metrics, you raise $2.5 million. It's like, okay, there must be better ways to do this.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's that, like you said, the guerrilla marketing and the like disruptive stuff. It's a shame that doesn't happen as much anymore, because definitely. You know, when we work with brands like My Voucher Code, you know, thankfully Mark Pearson, he was always up for doing that. You know, that you got to hustle stuff. Yeah, you do. And you got to hustle. You know, when one of the best things that we did for them, just that we had most fun with, was do you remember when Stephen Hester at Royal Bank of Scotland got that £1 million bonus, and everybody was up in arms about it and absolutely disgusted? This is, I can't even remember what year it was now, a long time ago. But Mark rang us up in the morning and said, I want to do something to do with this, all of this uproar about this RBS bonus. What can we do? So we toyed with the idea. He said, we want to do it today. So we were like, right, okay, how are we going to do this? So we toyed with the idea of trying to get helicopters to fly over to drop things out for people, you know, and that was a no-go because there's a lot of no-fly zones in London. But in the end, we settled on, we hired a tank from a company called Tanks A Lot, and they hire out tanks. At the time, it was like £2,000 for the day for the tank. We put Mark in it. We paraded it around London with banners on the side that said, didn't get an RBS bonus, use my voucher codes, because, you know, not everyone's that lucky to be rolling in it overnight, and people still need to save money. And it was just so much fun. And I just think, you know, trying to convince clients to do stuff like that now is difficult. And, you know, the floating down the Thames thing, which is a bit of an ongoing joke in PR world, because it's kind of like, what's going to be the next floating down the Thames trend? Because brands would just float things down the Thames to get a bit of a PR story. Like, I think one of the betting companies floated a giant rubber duck down there, and you see all sorts of things. But yeah, I think it's I miss that being like a really frequent thing that we would do for clients. But now, because it's all digital, it just needs to be like a little widget that you put on the website that's quite interesting, or an interactive infographic. But yeah, I think startups should still do stuff that makes people stop in the street and go, oh my God, that's strange. Who's doing that? You know, like Paul the Octopus. Was that Betfair? They had that. There was Paul the Octopus that was predicting all the results to one of the World Cups a few years back.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
and Betfair,
didn't it die?
I think he did. Yeah, God rest his soul. But
before the final.
Betfair did a stunt where they created a giant like model version of him, and they had it on the back of a lorry and deliberately broke it down in Oxford Street in London, and it caused chaos. And that was all a PR stunt, and you know, it worked. That's
what you're after. A bit of bravery like and although I guess if you're young and you've investors giving you a few million quid, the fear of cocking it up and, you know,
can I spend it on a giant octopus?
Yeah, because I would. I shouldn't say that, should I?
Yeah, I mean, it's good sometimes when clients rein us in, because we do have some crazy ideas, but it's not completely dead in the water. You still obviously get PR stunts going on and more guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, but
So how does the founder out there reach you if they're sitting there going, yeah, I can do guerrilla stuff. I want to, I can get maximum bang for my buck. I want to work with these guys. What's the best way to reach you?
Give us a ring, email. A lot of messages flying into our hello@10yetis.co.uk email address, or just pick up the phone. We're starting to get back to the office a little bit, thankfully. It's like, yes. So yeah, office line's always open, and if we're not there, we redirect it. But yeah, I love just chatting through ideas with people, and I don't mind giving away ideas for free. Ultimately it's part of PR, because
they won't do it anyway.
No, if you
give all the ideas away in the world, people don't do it. So I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, we've pitched some crazy stuff in our time. We were doing a big campaign with WaterAid, obviously really noble charity, really important cause, and it was part of their no choice campaign to talk about how a lot of people around the world don't have a choice if they drink dirty or clean water. So some of the ideas we came up with for that were quite drastic, and we did have to get reined in a little bit, and we ended up doing something with like a dirty water cooler and a clean one outside tube stations in London. So
that's still really smart,
still cool. Yeah. But it was it wasn't quite as close to the edge as we suggested. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things you've got to kind of navigate a little bit, but yeah, when we can convince clients to do it, it's a lot of fun.
And I bet you, it's not a bet, science, what's your data? I'm guessing that actually those have more impact. Yeah,
I mean, I think from the research that we do, or when clients share results with us, definitely they do make an impact, and they do kind of create some waves. So, I think that particular campaign for WaterAid, for example, we did it in certain areas of London because they wanted to increase the donors in those areas, and it worked. People saw it on their commutes. They interacted with it. There was information on the website that was linked to it that we were kind of driving people to. So it does. You've got if you can. People aren't as used to seeing stuff like that as they once were. It used to be there'd be like flash mobs every other day in London from a brand. Remember them?
It's time for the flash mob to cut. Well, no, there's nobody there.
Could be.
You can have your own flash mob at King's Cross just now. You're probably the only people in the. It's amazing. I was at Grantham this morning, and it's like still. Car park is empty, no matter the fact everybody's supposed to go back to the office. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, I for one can't wait. But I think with creative industries like PR and things,
spark.
When you take that office environment away, it's
try doing Sparky and Zoom. That doesn't work, does it? What you need is to go out, have a glass of wine, and you write down all the I say glass, I mean bottle or two.
Yeah.
And you write down all the crazy ideas, and then next morning you wake up and you go, well, those are insane. Apart from this one, which is quite good.
Yeah. There's definitely been times where we've stayed on a bit after work and had a few drinks in the office. And some of the best ideas come then.
That's because you relax.
Yeah. I think I'm more for tipsy brainstorming sessions. I think. Maybe I'll bring that in as a regular Wednesday thing.
Maybe it's the client attraction tool. Yeah, well, so you have to, if you're going to sign up, we'll obviously have to have our tipsy brainstorming session.
Yeah, of course. That's part of it.
And the first client you ever meet will be a teetotal athlete, of course. You'll be like, oh no, I'd rather have a protein bar.
Yeah.
I'm afraid our time is up.
No way already. That's gone so fast.
It has gone fast, and it's way over time. So that's great because it means that we're having a good time.
Yeah.
And I hope that everyone listening to have a good time, because I think 10 Yetis is one of those companies I just absolutely love. And I can't like, hopefully with my new thing coming soon, that we can work together, because I think that I love your approach. And I love the fact you haven't gone down that really big agency route, and taken away the humanity of it. And I think that'll stand you in great stead for the next 15 years.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's very, very kind of you. You're going to give me a big head. I won't be able to fit out the door in a minute.
Well, I'm just grateful you come on the show, so that the 107 people who will listen to this will get the benefit of your knowledge. And who knows?
Well, I'm sure it'll be 108 once I share this with my mum, because number one fan. So I'll get you some more fans. Don't worry.
Well, thank you very much. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Bye.